Islamic mystics called Sufis recognize a spiritual energy infusing the universe, one that comes from Allah, sometimes called barakah, meaning grace or blessing. These whirling dervishes are perhaps the best known of the Sufi mystics. But whirling dervishes are not the only Sufi dervishes. These dervishes are from an order called Tariqa Kaznazaniya, and what barakah apparently allows them to do is nothing short of astonishing. During a ritual known in the West as deliberately caused bodily damage, they demonstrate the ability to wound themselves in various parts of the body with knives, spikes, daggers, and snakes. Amazingly, they claim to feel no pain. Also, the dervishes say that they don't suffer any lasting effects. Very little bleeding, immunity to infection, and almost instantaneous healing. These rituals are considered controversial by most mainstream Muslims. Are these seemingly superhuman feats really the result of tapping into energy from God? Or is there some sort of self-hypnosis involved? These questions brought the Sufi rituals to the attention of alternative medical practitioner Dr. Howard Hall, a specialist in hypnosis and healing, something the medical establishment once scoffed at.
My earliest work was in hypnosis impacting on the immune system. They thought that was a radical idea. But the notion that there's some energy field facilitating healing is even too much for them to accept and understand.
Hall, a clinical psychologist at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, traveled to Baghdad in 1998 to see if these Sufi rituals were indeed an act of God or just a case of group hypnosis. Hall learned that the spiritual leader, called a sheikh, channels the protective energy to the dervishes. He was invited to see for himself that this was not a matter of hypnosis, but a gift from Allah.
When I walked up, I was asked to pull out one of the daggers out of someone's skull. Couldn't pull it out, and I was cringing, and it still gives me chills when I think about that.
But to really rule out hypnosis as the source of protection, Hall made the decision to try the ritual himself.
Well, look, all these people are doing this. There must be something to it. But if they're all faking me, I'm going to find out right now. And that was a risk. I thought it was legitimate, but I had to empirically and evidence-wise prove that to myself. The translator came up to me, said, "Dr. Hall, are you ready?" I swallowed, yes. And they said, "First seek permission from the sheikh to have you protected. You may have protection." He nodded. And the translator said, "Please open your mouth, Dr. Hall." And my mind was blown away. Wow, that's incredible. I'm not feeling pain. It's not like Novocaine. Pulled it out. There was no major bleeding, maybe a drop or so. And there's no pain. I knew it wasn't hypnosis because I teach hypnosis, and I knew I wasn't particularly hypnotizable to endure that type of pain and show that kind of rapid healing through a hypnotic process. And I said, wow, we're on to something now.
Hall was so inspired that he became a student of Sufi mysticism himself. Later, Dr. Hall will pierce his cheek for us in the lab in order to obtain what he hopes will be an actual record of the energy transfer. And we'll hear from a performer called the Torture King, who says he can do the same thing without supernatural intervention. With Dr. Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona's Center for Frontier Medicine, a leading institute in one of the most controversial fields of medical research, energy and spiritual healing.
When I first saw the footage that Dr. Hall brought back from Iraq, I couldn't believe it. In fact, I wondered, was there fraud involved? Once I became convinced that this was not just trickery, then the question was, well, gee, could you explain this as some sort of placebo effect? But as you look at instance after instance of phenomenal endurance of things that most of us couldn't possibly do. And there seems to be virtually no long-term damage. You begin to seriously question whether all of this could be explained as a simple mental effect. And then you start wondering, well, could the spiritual side of this be important as they believe it is?
Schwartz wants to determine what, if any, changes are taking place in the brain as Hall attempts to jam an ice pick through his cheek. But first, they need a measurement from a controversial device known as a gas discharge visualization instrument, or GDV.
The GDV system picks up electrical activity around the fingertips, and then using sophisticated computer algorithms actually presents a whole body image of the different regions, energy regions around the body.
GDV technology has its roots in a controversial process discovered over 75 years ago called Kirlian photography. In 1939, Semyon Kirlian found that if an object on a photographic plate is subjected to a high-voltage, high-frequency electrical field, an image is formed on the plate that resembles a halo. Some believe that this halo is a physical manifestation of the spiritual aura which supposedly surrounds us all. Scientists believe the halo is usually moisture. The effect is known as a corona discharge. Using the GDV, Schwartz is looking for evidence to show if Hall's personal energy field or aura changes as he injures himself with the ice pick. But first, they need to take a baseline reading. Now it's time for the test to begin. Hall is wired up to an electroencephalogram machine, or EEG, a device that graphically records the electrical activity of the brain.
When I do the piercing, I'm asking for specific aid for this intervention from the ancestors and the current sheikh.
In order to obtain this permission from the sheikh, Hall goes into a meditative state and says a series of mantras over and over again. The meditation period lasts nearly 90 minutes.
His brain did in fact go into a more relaxed state over the course of the prayer. We didn't see any anomalous things. He wasn't going into seizures, he wasn't going into a deep sleep state, he wasn't in a hyper-aroused state. His brain looked relatively normal.
He says that what we're about to record is the actual transfer of energy between the Sufi spiritual leader and himself. So does he feel any pain?
Gee, you can open your eyes if you'd like.
No, it's just a dull ache. There was no physiological pain.
So what you'll do is you'll take it out and then you close your eyes and just relax, okay?
I'll just check. Are you ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
I'll make sure I got the right place.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, will the wound heal as quickly as promised?
No blood?
And I'm going to lunch after this, guys.
That's good. By the way, there's no blood on the
Droplets of blood continue to trickle out.
as far as I can tell, there's some blood in it. They're just
There's usually a couple drops that come out. That's about the timing.
But after just a few minutes, Dr. Schwartz takes a closer look at the wound.
And it is, I can't even tell where it is. I mean, it's not obvious. A whole bunch of dots.
Was this result really caused by Sufi energy healing? Now the team looks to the GDV to see if Hall's aura was affected.
What this shows, which is the first time ever, is that if we compare the pre versus the post, we're seeing with the GDV a selective decrease in energy, curiously in the area where the actual skewer was placed through the jaw. You saw this gaping